Hey guys, Indecent Exposure here. It's been a very long time since I made a video and a lot has happened since the last time I did, and I'm going to fill you guys in just a little bit. After 11 years of dating and 3 years of wedding planning, my husband and I finally got married, and we also have a beautiful baby girl whom I absolutely adore. She's 4 months old now, just started teething, so life's been kind of crazy. But I'm going to try to get back into the swing of things, start making videos again. We'll see how it goes. Don't expect anything too crazy, but I'll definitely give it a shot. And I'm going to kick that off starting with my testimony. About a week ago, I did a live show with Mike at On Point Preparedness, and I feel like it went really well, but I also feel like parts of my testimony were lost due mostly to my stammering, and my internet kept kicking me out of the show, and I kept having to go back in. It was kind of a pain. I also got a few requests to do my testimony again, so here we are. And my testimony is really my whole life. I feel like it's a very much count your blessings kind of deal. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm just going to try to hit on the main points of it and the most powerful ones, and leave out a bunch of the fluff in between. That way it doesn't get too lengthy. So I'm going to go ahead and kick this off, and I hope you guys really enjoy this. Okay. The first part I want to break this into is my late teen life. And this portion of my life, I quite frankly am lucky I walked out of alive, because I did a lot of stupid stuff. My parents got divorced, which was kind of a blessing. My parents' relationship was quite toxic and abusive, and it bled out onto me and my sisters. So their divorce was very much a better life for everybody as a whole. After that, my mother moved down to Southern California, and I decided to go with her. When I went with her, I dropped out of high school. I started dating an older man. I was 17 at the time, and he was 4 years older than me. It's illegal in the state of California. I started drinking. I started smoking, I started doing drugs, all of which I never had done before. I also started illegal street racing, which I can't believe. I think about some of the stuff that I did in that car, and I'm so fortunate to even be making this video right now. I mean, there were windy roads that I was going way, like, over 100 miles per hour down, and running red lights, and I shouldn't be alive. I really shouldn't, and it's by the grace of God that I'm here making videos for you guys. Another blessing that came out of that time of my life was my husband. He was not the guy that I started dating when I first moved down there. He actually was one of his good friends who quickly became my best friend. And then when the other guy broke up with me, my husband and I stayed really, really good friends. We started dating a little while after that. We moved in together. We ended up getting married many years later. We dated for 11 years before we got married. We planned our wedding for 3 years. It was just, it was a big old mess, but it's such a blessing to have him in my life. So that's kind of the first part that I want to break it down to. I'm going to try to keep these too short because I don't want to keep anybody here too long. Just know that during this whole time I was definitely drinking, I was definitely doing drugs, I was definitely smoking, and life seemed to be all about parties and video games, which is not very fruitful and does not follow the way of God at all. During my early adult life, I'll kind of try to break this down for you. I was still, obviously, as I mentioned before, I was still doing a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking. I went through a time period where my boyfriend and we didn't have a home. We literally lived out of a car by the railroad tracks. We slept at night while the train was going by. It was so horrible when you hear the woo woo or the chugga 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 wake you up in the middle of the night and you're right next to it. I can't even explain. It just sucked, okay? It just totally sucked. So we tried to dig ourselves out of that by moving into a hotel room with my friend and her boyfriend. And our life continued, as per usual. Video games, drugs, all that kind of good stuff. There was actually a couple times where I was watching my friends do coke off the nightstand, and that was our focus. Our focus was just, have fun, party it up, YOLO, I guess. I mean, millennial thing, right? But yeah, so that stuff happened, and then my boyfriend and I were pulled out of the situation by my aunt. She was the aunt that would always come and ask you, how's your walk with Christ? Have you been reading your Bible? She was a very religious woman, very sweet woman too, super supportive, but she could be firm. Don't get me wrong. And she took us in. She found out that we didn't have a home, no real place to stay, and we were able to save up some money and get our own apartment. So when we got our apartment, we continued on with our, fun and games. And then one time we decided to do shrooms. I had never done shrooms before this time. And the first trip, it wasn't all bad. It was kind of interesting. I kind of decided that it wasn't something that I wanted to do again because, it was all right, but meh, it's not as fun as drinking or smoking, So my boyfriend surprised me a couple days later with more shrooms, and I was like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna do this now since, he's got them, all right, whatever. So we did the shrooms, and I had what's called a bad trip. I was trying to throw up. I wanted to get it out of my system the entire time. I couldn't get it out, so I got really frustrated, very upset. I started crying and fading in and out of consciousness. My boyfriend was like, doing the whole cool washcloth on the forehead because I was starting to overheat. He almost called the ambulance to come get me. I remember it looking like the walls were breathing, and when they would breathe, they would come closer and closer and closer towards me until they got so close, and then that's when I would go out of consciousness, and when I woke back up, the walls had re-expanded. It was like I could almost see myself tightening up. It was a horrible experience, and it opened a lot of spiritual doorways for me. After that, I became extremely depressed. I didn't want to live. I had actually never in my entire life had a suicidal thought. I'm generally a really super happy person, and I just, I'm high on life. I enjoy life. Obviously, I was enjoying all the parties. But it opened up, that spiritual door for depression. I started having suicidal thoughts. I started feeling extremely paranoid when I would walk through my house, and nothing felt normal. And I really had to pray myself out of that situation. I started talking with one of my older sisters about it, and when she was younger and doing drugs, she went through a demonic oppression like I did. And the only way that she came out of it was by praying her way out of it. So here is yet another example where even though I was not close to God at the time, He was there for me. And I prayed so much for so long. And eventually, it all kind of faded away. And now today I sit here and I'm completely normal. I have nothing wrong. I have no paranoid. I'm right back to being my happy self, even happier now that I'm not on drugs. And that, experience was kind of my blessing to pull me out of drugs, because ever since then I have stopped smoking pot. I have stopped doing drugs like shrooms and stuff like that. That's never, honest to God, doesn't happen since then. The thing that did increase, however, because I had to supplement, was alcohol. And alcohol, you'll find, has been quite a bit of a problem for me, as you'll tell further along in the story. So after all that went down, my boyfriend and I moved into a new apartment where a whole bunch of other fun stuff kind of went down. During this time, my boyfriend, I believe we had been dating for about 4 or 5 years at this time. We broke up. Our relationship, it started young. Obviously, I was 17, he was 21, and it didn't age well. It grew into a very unhealthy, almost started to resemble my parents' style of relationship, where it was just disrespectful. There was no physical abuse. We just drank a lot, we argued a lot, we were not respectful towards each other at all, and there was literally no God in our lives. So as a result of all that, we broke up. We weren't sure if we'd ever get back together again. We knew we needed time to mature. We went out and we started dating other people. During that time, I decided that I wanted to become a police officer. Now, I had been teaching self-defense for a really long time. I started training when I was about 15, 16 years old, and I started teaching when I was 18. And that just kind of, it assisted me and pushed me towards wanting to become a cop, because all I really wanted to do was help people, in their time of need. Really, as a police officer, you see it on TV where, they're always out there just trying to get the underdog and keep him down, but really officers are out there because they genuinely want to be there for people and help them when they're at their lowest. They're not there to try to keep them down. They really do want to help. It's the system that's messed up, not the officers. So that's a whole nother tangent. So I started going to college for that during the time that my boyfriend and I were broken up. And a couple years down the road, I think it was about a year later, my boyfriend and I got back together after we had dated some other people that created, some problems for us, which God really did. He helped me through. I had a lot of issues when we first got back together because of stuff that had gone on while we were broken up, and I did a lot of praying and a lot of healing over that. And that's just, that's testament to, even though I wasn't super close with God at the time, definitely far from as close as I am with him now, he was still present and always there, always wanting to help me when I needed him. You can always turn to God when you need help, and I definitely turn to him all the time. And so he helped me in that situation. Then after graduating college, I found out that for an Associates of Applied Science, I was $40,000 in debt after I went to the school that I went to. The school I went to had a motto of get in, get out, get ahead. It wasn't get in and get out and be in debt. They didn't tell you that part. Fortunately, a couple years after I graduated, the college I went to was sued because they were claiming job placement that they didn't actually provide. So that school got sued, they got shut down, and people who attended the school, just so happened between the time period that I went, got complete debt forgiveness. So I was then, by the grace of God, forgiven of $40,000 in debt, and I did not have to pay a cent back. I still have my degree, but I didn't have to pay anything back. So that is just an amazing, I can't even explain how much of a weight that lifts when you realize, oh my goodness, I don't have to pay all this money back. It's awesome. So that was great. My boyfriend and I coming back together during that time, that was also a huge blessing because, we came back more mature. We definitely still had a little bit of issues to work out, which today our relationship it's superb. It's healthy. We don't argue, not nearly as much as we used to. We do the usual, like couples bickering or whatever, but it's so sparse, and all we really do is just focus on enjoying each other now, because we know what it's like to be without one another, and life is not nearly as good without him in my life or without me in his life. So that's that part. We'll move on to the next one. So moving on to my later adult years, it was high time for me to put my expensive education that I didn't know I was getting debt relief for to good use, and I was applying to becoming a police officer. I was having a really hard time finding an agency that would put me through the academy, and I decided to go ahead and put myself through the academy. There's a couple ways that you can go through here in California, and you can either put yourself through or you can try to get an agency to put you through. You can do a full-time academy, or you can do what's called a modular academy, where you can usually find it at a local college, and it's basically taking nighttime college classes, except they're like 6 to 8 hours long. I was basically, I'd wake up in the morning at 7 o'clock, I'd go to work, I'd be at work till 5, and then I had the academy at 6, and I'd have that until 10, 11 o'clock at night, and mostly on the weekends was our long 8-hour days. It was a very, very busy part of my life. So I started to put myself through the academy because I couldn't get supported, and then kept on applying, and, besides my background, I really honestly was able to keep a pretty squeaky clean nose records-wise. So I had nothing of what I had done was on file, because I never really stole anything. I never really got caught doing my street racing. I never got caught doing drugs. I was never, drunk in public, nothing like that. So somehow I managed to keep a pretty squeaky clean background, and I still couldn't seem to get hired. I was trying to get myself hired with the city of Sacramento. I couldn't get in with Sacramento. I was trying to get in with corrections all over California. Nobody would take me. It was like I was getting shot down at every turn, and I couldn't figure out why. Come to find out, it was a huge blessing for me, because the hours that I was spending away during school and work trying to get myself to become a police officer was doing a lot of damage to my relationship with my boyfriend. And he was actually my fiance at this time. He had proposed. Yay! Kudos! So it started to do a lot of damage. We were spending way too much time apart from each other, and it was causing our relationship to essentially crumble. And not only that, my oldest sister, she's a very spiritual woman, very God-fearing woman. She loves the Lord. She's gone to church, you know, for a long time now. And she had a dream. And basically, the dream, you know, if you just look at the dream for what it was, you wouldn't really know what it is. But hindsight's 20/20, because the dream was basically about me becoming a police officer. And when I would have done it, it was right before everybody was basically turning on the cops. You know how now the cops are the bad guys, everybody wants to shoot and stab and, you know, kill them all the time. It's just, it's horrible. Like, why would you want to do that to another human being? I just don't understand. But the time that I would have been a cop would have been right when that portion of everything was kicking off. And her dream basically illustrated the fact that I would have died in the line of duty, which means I wouldn't be here making videos, and I wouldn't be here with my husband, and I wouldn't be here with my daughter, which would really suck. And I'm blessed that she told me about that dream. When she told me, I really fought it. I didn't want to believe it. I remember crying my eyes out like, no, this is terrible. This isn't true. I don't believe her. But something in my heart obviously was telling me I need to listen. And, you know, I did the stubborn thing, and I fought. But eventually I kind of got the hint. I had to really sit down and have a heart-to-heart with myself when, you know, everything in my relationship started falling apart. And I asked myself, is this the kind of life that I want to live, where I don't ever know if I'm kissing my husband goodbye for the last time, if I'm kissing my children goodbye for the last time. Will I get to come home and never see them again, tuck them in at night, hug them, feel them? It's hard. It's a hard thought. So that was something that I really had to let go of. And I did, and it was hard, but I'm so grateful now, because I see the relationship that I have with my family. And I was so blessed. It felt like a curse. But now I thank God every day for the fact that He didn't let me become a police officer, and He didn't let me die, and He let me stay with my family. So that in its own is a huge testament. So shortly after, collect myself, shortly after that, I kind of started to settle down in a job at a Christian organization that my sister had helped me get. And I have two sisters. I have my oldest sister, who's the very religious one, who goes to church all the time. I have my middle sister, who was apparently a closet Jesus freak. I had no idea until this portion of the story that I'm about to tell you. I was so far lost and so far deceived. And she, you know, we were walking back from getting coffee one day at work, and I was telling her how I believed, and my fiance at the time believed, that, you know, the God of the Bible was the same God as Buddha, as Ra, as Allah. He just, you know, came to all these different cultures as a different being so that they could better relate. And that was basically what we believed. You know, we were totally convinced of this. And I remember my sister, she stops and she looks at me, and she has this look on her face. It was sadness, and it was pity. And she just kind of grabbed me and was like, you need to really go do some studying, because what you just told me is completely wrong, and that's exactly what they want you to think. And I'm thinking, they? What is she talking about, you know? But at the same time, I was kind of shocked, because I never knew this sister of mine to be so religious and so forthcoming about it, which kind of makes sense, because, you know, whenever she was forthcoming about it, she usually kind of got hacked down a little bit. So I took her very seriously, and, you know, in that moment right there, that moment was God. Because had it been anybody else said that to me at any other time, I would have completely rejected it. I would have written it off as religious mumbo jumbo. They're just being super judgmental. I don't want anything to do with this. You know, in those times when your pride jumps out and is like, hey, now I've got this, you know, that kind of thing. But because it was her and the way that she approached it, her words, the way that she came at it, it was perfect. It couldn't have been more perfect. And that correction from her, and I thank God every day for giving her the courage to come out and say that to me, because I was so brave. It sent me down the path that I am on now. That moment right there is my defining moment that brought me to where I am today, sitting here in front of my computer, being brave enough to put my voice over the internet so that you guys can hear it. I immediately went back to my desk and I was filled with curiosity, like, what was she talking about? And so over the next couple years, I started doing research. Now, I'm one of those people that like to listen, so of course I ended up on YouTube. And I found channels like Face Like the Sun and The Scariest Movie Ever, which, KJ, if you're hearing this, I love your channel. Gons, I love your channel. Mike, you know I love your channel. We've had this conversation. And there's so many more out there. Pockets of the Future, you know, the list could go on forever. But I started getting really heavily involved in these channels and getting all this information and this knowledge, and I just grew in wealth. It was a veritable cornucopia of like just everything that I could absorb. And I started wondering, you know, what am I going to do with all this knowledge? Because I felt it was like bursting out of me, and I had to share with people, because there's so many people that I know that still have no idea. I mean, it took me forever to just get my husband to accept the fact that there is a new world order, that the Illuminati is real, and now he sees it and he points it out to me in videos all the time. It's hilarious. I love it. But it started to inspire me, and I was like, you know, started to think, well, maybe I could make videos. And then I heard this voice in my head be like, no, you don't need to make videos. There's just, you know, there's so many people out there that are already doing it, and you don't need to. You're good. And I think that was honestly Satan trying to put me down from doing God's work. Because shortly after that, I heard another voice that said, no, I want you to make videos. You are a different person. You have a different voice, a different perspective, and not everybody is going to respond to the same people that you listen to like you did, but they may respond to you. They might be few and they might be many, but whoever you reach, I appointed you to reach. And so I took that as a confirmation that God wanted me to go out there and start putting out some videos. So then I put my first one out. And it was fun, you know. I enjoyed it. It's a lot of research and a lot of time, but it's doing God's work, and I am happy, more than happy, to do God's work and help bring souls to the kingdom of God, because He has done so much, clearly, from just the short story that I told you about my life to save me. And I could have spent, you know, hours talking about things from like when I was a little kid, and how somebody saw an angel standing between me and a car that almost hit me in the middle of the road, you know, that kind of thing. But I don't want to waste my time on all of that. Even though I'm sure somebody will ask me about it now, but that's okay. If you want to know, I'll tell you. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. My daughter is awake now. She, oddly enough, slept just long enough for me to record this, which is another blessing. Praise the Lord. I'm sure you can hear her in the background, so I'm going to get to her. Thank you guys for listening. I hope this really helped you out. I hope you enjoyed the story. You're always welcome to ask me questions, always down in the comment section. I'll try to respond as soon as I can. Alright guys, you take care. God bless.